I remember the sound of the porch swing creaking, John's laughter echoing in the evening air. I never told anyone this part, but the day we lost our home, I left a vase of fresh roses on the kitchen table, just like always. I didn't know they'd wilt in an empty house. They died quietly, like everything else we thought would last forever. For 30 years, the smell of those roses filled our home, a place we built with our own hands. They climbed a trellis my husband, John, made for our 10th anniversary. We had a swing on the front porch where we'd sit in the evenings. That swing sold for $10. The man who built it never sat on it again. This isn't a story I ever thought I'd be telling. It's a story of confusion and of a promise that was broken not by a person, but by a process. A process I now realize is designed to be confusing, a maze of fine print and gentle reassurances that can lead you right off a cliff. My name is Eleanor, and this is the story of how a reverse mortgage, a tool we were told would give us financial freedom, took our home and shattered our future. To understand how we lost it all, you have to understand what we had. John and I were high school sweethearts. We bought a small plot of land when it was still mostly fields and trees. He wasn't a builder. He was an accountant, a man of numbers, but he was determined. He spent nights poring over blueprints. We broke ground on a Saturday in early spring. For 2 years, that land was our entire life. He hammered every nail. I painted every wall. He even painted our daughter's ceiling sky blue and stuck glow-in-the-dark stars on it. She believed in them for years. When it was done, it was perfect. A 3-bedroom ranch with a big front porch and sunlight that spilled across the wooden floors in the afternoon. That house became the stage for our lives. I can still see our daughter's first kiss on the back porch, a blur of teenage awkwardness and giggles. I can smell the smoke from the Thanksgiving. John burned the turkey so badly we had to order pizza, eating it on our best china and laughing until we cried. I remember planting lavender in the wrong spot by the walkway, but it grew anyway, a happy little mistake that scented the air every time we came home. He used to tell our grandkids, his chest puffed out, Grandpa built this with his own hands. The garden was my sanctuary. In the summer, we'd sit on the porch swing, drinking iced tea and listening to the hum of the cicadas. The house wasn't just a structure, it held our laughter, our tears, our history. When retirement came, it felt like a victory. John had planned everything, or so we thought. The house was paid off, a fortress of security. We felt like we'd done everything right. What could possibly go wrong? But just because the porch swing still swayed didn't mean the storm hadn't already started. We quickly discovered that retirement was more expensive than we'd planned. Property taxes, prescriptions, a leaky roof. Our careful budget started to unravel. John, a man who'd spent his life making sure everything added up, felt the strain most. He'd always been the provider. I could see the worry etching new lines around his eyes. He started spending hours at his desk, hunched over bank statements. I tried to help. I quietly looked into a home equity line of credit and tax relief programs for seniors. I even asked a neighbor if she'd ever heard of tax deferment. She just shrugged. "Sounds complicated," she said. I wish I'd asked someone who knew. I felt dismissed and a little foolish, so I let it drop. That's when the commercials started to sound like a solution. Unlock the equity in your home, a friendly actor would say. We even toured a smaller, cheaper house in a nearby town, but we walked out before the realtor was even done. "It's just not ours," John said in the car, and I knew he was right. One evening, he turned to me. "Ellie," he said quietly, "maybe we should look into that. A reverse mortgage. It could give us some breathing room." A knot of unease tightened in my stomach. The thought of leaving our home was unbearable, so I agreed to at least listen. A week later, a man in a crisp suit sat at our kitchen table. He was charming, complimenting my garden and talking about financial freedom. "It's a government-insured program," he said, making it sound as safe as a savings bond. He made it sound so simple. We'd get a lump sum, no monthly payments, and the loan would only be due when we both passed away or sold the house. Then came the paperwork, a stack of documents an inch thick. We were made to feel like we were wasting his time by asking questions. There was a mandatory counseling session over the phone, a brief, scripted formality. That night, after John was asleep, I pulled the contract out and sat with it under our small kitchen lamp. I tried to read it. I really did. But the words just swam together. I admitted to myself in the silence of our home that I didn't understand a word. Have you ever ignored a voice inside you just because you loved someone too much to listen to it? I remember the moment we signed. That cold knot of unease was still in my chest. But I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe we were safe. I looked at his face, so full of desperate hope, and I silenced my own fear. I trusted his desire to protect us. He signed. Then he slid the papers to me, and I signed my name. It was done. For the first year, it felt like we'd done the right thing. We fixed the roof and paid off our credit cards. We had stopped a leak in our financial roof by dynamiting the foundation. We thought the worst was over. But it hadn't even begun. I was folding laundry one afternoon when I heard John gasp from the other room. He was standing by the front door holding a letter, and the look on his face told me our life was about to change forever. It was a notice of default. My heart hammered against my ribs. It said we had failed to meet our obligations. Specifically, we were delinquent on our property taxes. We had been a few months late paying them the previous year after our grandson had a medical emergency. We'd paid the county, of course, along with the penalty, but we had no idea this triggered a default on the reverse mortgage. It was a clause buried deep in the paperwork. We thought the worst had happened. And then the doorbell rang. The color drained from John's face. He spent the next week on the phone. "The terms of the loan are clear," they said. "The loan is now due and payable in full." When the statement arrived, the original loan had ballooned with fees and compounding interest. Our equity, our life savings, was almost gone. The strain on our marriage was immense. The house became a pressure cooker of fear and blame. "How could you let this happen?" I screamed at him one night. "You were the accountant. You were supposed to understand this." "I thought I did," he yelled back, his face crumpled in despair. "They said it was safe." That night, the silence was so heavy I couldn't breathe. I looked at this man, my John, the man who once carried me across the creek behind our house after I twisted my ankle so I wouldn't get my shoes wet. Now he couldn't even look me in the eye. He started sleeping on the couch, as if the bed belonged to someone who hadn't failed. He started trimming his nails over the kitchen sink, like a guest afraid to leave a mess in a house that was no longer his. We were isolated in our terror. We didn't tell our children. While sorting through a closet, we found the baby sweater we once wrapped our daughter in. I pressed it to my face, breathing in a scent that had long since faded. It still felt like love. I remembered John joking years ago, glass of wine in hand on our anniversary, "This house'll outlive us both, Ellie." Now, all I could picture were strangers walking through our living room. The man who once proudly told our grandkids, "Grandpa built this with his own hands," could barely look at the walls. Our ruin came as a legal notice taped to our front door. A notice of trustees' sale. They had set a date when our home, our life's work, would be sold on the courthouse steps. We were losing our identity. But what we didn't know, what they don't want you to know, was buried on page 14 of that contract, in a clause about something we never thought would happen. The climb out wasn't about money. It was about surviving the emotional wreckage. It began with packing 30 years of our life into cardboard boxes. We held a garage sale. Strangers sifted through our belongings. A young couple bought our porch swing for $10. I had to turn away so they wouldn't see my tears. As I wrapped dishes, I could almost smell the Thanksgiving turkey John burned. When I took down the curtains, I could see our daughter on the back porch again. I held the lavender-scented pillow from our bedroom, the one I used to shake out each morning while watching John sip coffee. It was just a pillow now. One day, a neighbor saw us loading boxes. "I heard you're moving," she said with a bright smile. "Downsizing, right?" I just nodded because I didn't have the heart to explain. We hadn't told the children. The shame always caught in my throat. They finally found out when they came to help us pack. There was no anger, just a deep, profound sadness. I remember touring an apartment complex a few weeks later. It was perfectly nice, clean, empty. But it wasn't ours. When I asked the manager if there was a spot for a small garden, she just smiled and shook her head. That's when the grief hit me. Not in the drama of the foreclosure, but in the quiet loss of the simple things. The first week there, I opened a kitchen drawer and saw my old measuring spoons. I just stood there and broke down. It wasn't the spoons. It was everything they didn't belong to anymore. In the aftermath, I spent years trying to understand what went wrong. I want to share what I wish we had known. This was our story, but I've since heard dozens more, some even worse. First, a reverse mortgage should be a last resort. Explore every other option. Look into a home equity line of credit, HELOC, or property tax relief programs. Second, that mandatory counseling is your most important shield. Insist on a thorough meeting. Ask them, "If I take out this much, what will the balance be in 5 years? In 10? A good counselor works for you, not the lender. Third, never let one spouse handle this alone. Both partners must understand every single detail. This is the time to ask the stupid questions. Finally, read everything. If you need to, take the documents to an independent elder law attorney. Pay them for an hour of their time. That small expense could have saved us our home. I'm not sharing this for pity. I'm sharing it so no other woman has to pack up her life and say goodbye to the walls that raised her. We can't take back what we lost, but we can stop someone else from losing what they still have. Please share this. If you know someone thinking of signing a reverse mortgage, send them this. Don't protect them from it. Protect them with it. We live in a small apartment now. It's clean and safe, but it's not home. There's no garden, no porch swing, no pencil marks on a door frame. Every day I'm haunted by the ghost of the life we lost. John is not the same man. The guilt he carries is a heavy cloak. He lost the home he built with his own hands, and a part of him was lost with it. Our trust in each other has slowly healed, but our trust in the systems that are supposed to protect us is gone. A home is so much more than an asset you can borrow against. It's the container for your life. A reverse mortgage can seem like a magic key, but they don't tell you it can also be the key that locks you out forever. The roses in my cheap plastic vase don't bloom like they used to on our sunny kitchen table. I stopped buying them for 2 months once, but the silence on the table was worse. So I still buy them because they remind me of everything we grew and everything we lost. One signature changed our lives. The house didn't outlive us, but the story might. Watch this next for another gripping tale of retirement gone wrong, plus the lesson you can't afford to miss.